Where you gonna find the people make the world go round? On a Sunday morning, the activated, dedicated, liberated can be found. On a Sunday morning, where you go to find what the papers won't be saying. Wake yourself up with a radical cup of solidarity. I'll give you a clue. It's not the Andrew Marr Show. You find it on Zoom. It's not the Andrew Marr Show. It's got comedians too. Not those clowns in smart grey suits. It's not the Andrew Marr Show.
I'm bitterly disappointed in the results, and I take full responsibility for the results, and I will take full responsibility for fixing things. We have changed as a party, but we haven't set out a strong enough case to the country. Very often we've been talking to ourselves instead of to the country, and we've lost the trust of working people, particularly in places like Hartlepool. I intend to do whatever is necessary to fix that.
Welcome to Not the Andrew Marr Show, where we have an election special. We've got lots of people coming in from all over the country to speak about what's happened where they are. We've got a newspaper review as well to come up at the beginning. And we've got special guest Andrew Fisher. I'd just like to thank everyone for a lot of messages of support for me in the last week. I had a family bereavement and I was blown away by the response of messages. I wasn't particularly asking for support. Just shows me how strong our community is and our movement is. Thank you very much for that. But I know everyone is reading the papers this morning and quite shocked about what's been going on. So we've got our two newspaper reviews. We've got John Dunn in Brighouse. Are you there, John?
I'm here, Crispin, yes.
And we've got Sonali in London. Are you there, Sonali?
Sonali, yes. Hello, Crispin. Nice to see you, and very sorry to hear about your loss as well.
Oh, thank you. Now, the main story today, it's on the front page of both the papers that I get on Sunday morning, which is the Observer and the Sunday Mirror. We've got this story here, Angela Rayner fired as Labour gripped by post-poll rancour. That's a good word, isn't it? And we've got Rayner on his parade in the Sunday Mirror. Now, who should we ask to speak about this first? Sonali, what do you think? Do you think that Angela Rayner should have been fired as the chair and the campaign coordinator?
I mean, I think it's quite telling, the clip that you showed just in the run up to the going into the papers. It's sort of hilariously ironic, isn't it? Seeing a leader saying that he'll take full accountability for the election results, and then that the evening of the first set of election results, obviously trying to pin the blame on the deputy leader. I think it sort of shows a worrying lack of accountability. And I think this, along with your usual Labour right figures coming out with, honestly, like disgusting phrases like Long Corbyn to try to explain away this set of election results, doesn't suggest to me like the leadership has really fully gripped the change of direction that the party really desperately needs. So this seems like just a continuing shirking of responsibility. And it just shows, once again, a dereliction of duty to all the people who need Labour to be a strong voice in opposition and to be seeking to take over government.
And then we've got, as you say, in the it's in both the papers that it's quite prominent in both these so-called left-wing papers. But then if you go to the Morning Star from yesterday, we have this as the front page: "No hope, Starmer's Labour rout." John, did you write that headline?
No, it would have had a few stronger words in Crispin if I'd written it. Most of 4 letters long. No, I mean it is a rout, but it's not Starmer's rout. There's a lot of good socialist former councillors who've lost the seats because of this man, and the people. We might have lost councillors, but the people who work for local authorities are going to get in the neck even more so now because of this. And then it's no good calling for a rethink. It's like, how can you ask a man like Starmer to rethink his strategy? Why can the left do that when his whole strategy is to have a war on the left rather than taking the fight to the Tories? And reading the press, the things you sent out today, there's not just got to be a rethink and a restructure, there's got to be a reorientation. I'm old enough and long enough in the tooth to remember when Labour was part of a movement and you met your councillors at work and in the street and Labour represented something. What does it stand for now? Who knows? We're not Boris Johnson, that's about it. And I can drink beer and eat ice cream. That's been Labour's election campaign. No wonder we lost.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got lots more commentary on this. Sonali, we've got the Sunday Mirror's editorial. I thought was interesting because they're saying he's a decent guy, and then it says the graveyards of political careers are full of good and decent men and women who had a way with words. Leaders need to inspire. Leaders cannot sit on fences. Most important of all, leaders need to set out a direction of travel for others to follow. I mean, they've been giving him such good press in the past few months, and we've seen that on this show. And they're laying into him quite a lot in that editorial. I thought that was quite interesting. But then to combine that with the Observer, which is another Starmer publication, really. Saying, what does Labour stand for? We need an answer soon. I mean, they're all having a go at Starmer, and it's quite unbelievable considering where they were like a week or two ago. Why weren't they saying this stuff then? Why didn't they say Labour's not got anything on the plate? What do you think about this turnaround? Do you think Starmer's in trouble?
Yes. Yes, I do think he's in trouble. But I mean, he went into this election. Let's face it, he's been on easy mode. I think the MSN, the mainstream media have been backing him. The Observer, as you say, have been extremely, while they were like literally wouldn't even back Labour in the last general election, been extremely supportive of his leadership. He's not been getting, he's not been having the difficulties that a left-wing Labour leader would have. But the complacency that's set in, I think, we've been talking about it, Crispin, we've been talking about it on this show and, various other places. The complacency and sort of like almost the naivety that they could walk into this election and it would be so easy that, new Labour 2.0, whatever you want to call it, is just going to be about riding it out until the Tories failed enough for them to walk in and be a shiny government in waiting. And they have, they've misread not just the challenges that they're facing, they've misread the Tory party, they've misread their responsibilities in opposition, and that is unforgivable. And they've treated people really with contempt. They've treated the 10 million plus people who voted for Labour in the 2019 general election with contempt. They've treated the membership with contempt, and they haven't reached out to anybody in any way. They've been throwing a lot of the core voters under the bus. They've been completely pinning their hopes on, I guess, what you'd call like the unicorn constituency, this sort of mythical red wall voter that is some sort of, I don't know, 1930s idea of what the working class are in Britain. Like, they're not engaging at all with what working class people actually need. When we've been facing hundreds of thousands of people being forced into unsafe working conditions during COVID, when we've been seeing working class people forced onto planes and deported, we've been seeing homelessness rising. They haven't engaged with any of this. They have barely engaged with workplace issues. They haven't been engaged, they've been very sort of reluctantly engaging with hire and refire, which is going to be, the defining issue in the coming months about workplace struggle. What have they been doing? They've just been attacking the left. And now, it can't be a big surprise to many of us, but they seem genuinely surprised. And that's really worrying. That's really worrying.
Well, I mean, to me, I just think they're sort of like, it's almost like they're behaving, the media, the newspaper media, the Observer especially, behaving a bit like Starmer in this sort of knee-jerk, oh, we didn't see this coming, we've got to do something urgently now. Why didn't they spot this before? It's bewildering that, Andrew Warnes is saying he needs to act more urgently. He's been saying nothing for so long. But and as you were saying, Sonali, in the what we could have been talking about. I mean, this is one of the stories here, John. We've got this story about Priti Patel's sort of asylum plans. These are being put through without any difficulty whatsoever with the leadership of Starmer, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, apparently Starmer bases his ideas, if you can call them that, on think tanks composed of former Tory voters. Well, if you ask people like that, they're gonna tell you don't stand up for immigrants, you don't fight for the homeless and the things that Sonali's just been talking about. And this is an interesting article. I mean, I'm no lover of the EU, but if even a capitalist organisation like that can see how inhumane Patel's strategy of returning migrants, why is Labour always afraid of standing up for the rights of migrants? I've worked with asylum seekers and refugees, teaching them basic English and things like this. And these people are the most unfortunate people you could ever meet. People who've had to flee wars where their families have been killed by our bombs. People who are fleeing poverty caused by our imperialist past, and the plundering and the raping of countries for their raw materials. If, we had an article earlier about decency isn't enough. If it's not decent to stand up for these kinds of people, as I say, people in the most dire circumstances, and to kill the myth that they're coming over here to get rich on £39 a week, which is what they're given, placed in housing that's substandard, that belongs to the private sector and things like that. It's an easy thing to do, to say we defend these people, and it's a decent thing to do. And if we don't stop scapegoating, allowing the Tories to scapegoat these people, then we're going to make a rod for our own backs as a party, because who else do you stop? We saw Labour in the past attacking benefit claimants and things like that, and Starmer himself wanted to jail these people. This is all part of Labour losing what it used to have, which is a social conscience. And if we've got to fight for anything, you've got to fight for Labour to have some sort of conscience before you can even start rebuilding it.
Well, and then the story that that I saw as well in the Observer was that actually the public are very much. It says 76% of those asked said that it should be against the law to fire and rehire. So, Sonali, I think Howard Beckett put out a tweet that Starmer wouldn't sign a petition about fire and rehire. So why on earth isn't Labour going for these policies, talking about this kind of issue?
Yeah, this should be a shoo-in. I mean, this should be an absolutely, like, honestly, whatever the ideological commitment of Starmer and his advisors, they should surely see this as something that they could walk in terms of taking on the Tories, because every ordinary person can look at this and say, well, I'm potentially on the line for this. You know, this can affect every single sector in the country. You know, furlough's about to end, the eviction ban's about to be lifted. I think the vast majority of us are feeling that sense of precarity and fear. And who is speaking for us? You know, in Parliament, a very, you know, just a handful of, you know, just SCG MPs basically. So I can't tell you why they're not doing that, Crispin. They've obviously Starmer's been from the beginning tried to sort of set himself apart from the unions. We've seen a bit of prevarication on that. There's been like a bit of back and forth about him trying to, I guess, at least on social media, show some commitment. But there's going to be, this is, as I said, this is going to be a defining issue over the coming months, not just for GMB members, but for members of probably every union. This is going to be a way to try to sort of recalibrate the economy from the Tories' point of view, to recalibrate our workers' rights, our living standards. I mean, this, you know, I'm afraid this is what class war looks like. And if the Labour Party don't stand up for ordinary people and our rights and our wages and our living standards, then they are going to wither, and this sort of degradation of their support base is going to increase.
Right. Well, I think we might leave the newspapers there, because I'm aware of the time, and we've got the whole country to cover, which is quite an undertaking in about 3/4 of an hour, or an hour at most. So I'm going to move on now, and thank you, Sonali. I might ask you to come back in as well, Sonali, and John. I might ask you to come back in as well. Thank you both. Now I wanted to speak to Andrew Fisher, because Andrew, I've looked at some of your tweets, and you're pretty angry about what's going on as a result, that sort of aftermath of the elections and what's been going on. How do you feel about Angela Rayner, for example, being sacked?
Look, I'm not, you know, one of Angela Rayner's biggest supporters. I'm not hostile to her either, comes to that. But, you know, I voted for Richard Bergen and Dawn Butler, I think. I can't remember in which order now, but those two to be the deputy leader over her. But, you know, look, yesterday, Labour had some pretty good results. Andy Burnham was re-elected overwhelmingly in Manchester. Steve Rotherham in Liverpool. We had a great result in Wales, where we, you know, equalled our best ever result because, you know, of what they're doing there. We won mayoralties in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. We won the mayoralty in the west of England. Great results in places like Salford and Preston. My birthplace, Portsmouth, you know, we gained a lot of councillors. The place I grew up in, Worthing, you know, excellent results there as well, which is brilliant. You know, warmed my heart, and I can see Dawn very happy as well at the bottom of my screen. But, you know, instead of talking about all of that, which was actually, look, where Labour did offer something, where Labour campaigned well, had done good community organising, had offered decent policies and a bit of vision for people in their area, we did well. Instead of having that as the conversation, we had Keir Starmer, who said he'd take full responsibility, scapegoating his deputy leader, who everybody knows had very little input into the Hartlepool result, into the 300 councillors we lost across mostly Northern England and the Midlands. And so I just think it's a stupid thing to do. And today we're going to get, I hope, Tracy Bray being elected as the first woman Metro Mayor in West Yorkshire, which will be a good result. She stood on a fairly left platform, talked about control of the buses like Andy Burnham's doing in Manchester. And instead of talking about that, we're now going to have a reshuffle, which, you know, why? It's, you know, the problem with Keir's shadow cabinet, the problem with Keir's Labour Party as it stands, is that he hasn't set out any vision. He's got no clue what he stands for. He thinks you can patronise northern voters into voting Labour by standing in front of a flag and showing you drink, you know, ale. I mean, it's just insulting, and that's why we lost. He didn't offer anything that addressed people's material needs. And, you know, frankly, the party got the results it deserves. And if I was a councillor, I'd be livid. Because the thing is, in a lot of parts of the country, there isn't much local media anymore. You rely on that national campaign to tell people what Labour is for. And all they saw was somebody posing in front of bloody wallpaper, drinking beer at every opportunity, which is pretty unprofessional. I was out canvassing. I never stopped to have a beer every 5 minutes and get photographed. Or standing in front of a flag. It's pathetic. So, yeah, I am angry. And I think a lot of people, I mean, I didn't vote for Keir, but a lot of people who will have voted for him thinking, look, here he is. He's sort of promised a kind of slightly watered down Corbyn agenda, but more electable, you know, sharper suit, better on the media, perhaps. That's how he sold himself. I'm not saying that's true. Evidently it's not, but that's how he sold himself. And I think a lot of people will be looking at it today, looking at his judgment in the last 24 hours and thinking, you know, if anybody needs to go, it's not Angela Rayner, put it that way.
Can I just ask you before I move on, what was it like when you were working for Jeremy, and there was we had by-elections and we had local elections there, and sometimes they weren't perfect results, but they weren't ever particularly bad. I mean, I think Copeland was a bad result, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What was it like after that? Was there a panic? How would Jeremy have reacted to this kind of thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's take Copeland. I mean, Jeremy won his first couple of by-elections, actually. The first one was Oldham West when Michael Meacher sadly died, and we won that, even though everybody said, oh, this will be Jeremy Corbyn finished, the white working class hate him and Oldham will turn blue. And we won it with a higher majority than it ever had. A higher share of the vote than it had ever had. But yeah, Copeland was on the same day as the Stoke by-election, if you remember, in early 2017. And we held on to the Stoke seat. I forget which one it was, whether it's central or north, but we held on to that and we lost Copeland narrowly. It wasn't by a big margin. But yeah, that was a really disappointing result. And look what we did 4 months later in that general election in June. You know, we took it on the chin. Jeremy didn't blame Tom Watson for that defeat. He didn't blame members of his shadow cabinet and have a reshuffle. He didn't, you know, start saying, oh, well, it was something or other, the media or whatever. We took it on the chin and thought, God, we've got to pull our finger out. And we did in 2017. That is still the only general election this century where Labour has made gains in a general election, and it was under Jeremy Corbyn. So we did pull our finger out in that. You know, it was a bad result. We had bad council results as well at times. I mean, actually, in Jeremy's last set of council elections, I think we lost 84 councillors. On Thursday, we lost over 300, and they're still counting in a lot of areas, so it could be worse than that. So, you know, let's put this in perspective. We've had bad results, you know, hands up, and obviously 2019 was abysmal, right? There's no getting away from that. But Jeremy took responsibility, you know, and said on the night, I resign. You know, I'm not saying Keir Starmer should have done that because of the Hartlepool by-election. That wasn't quite the same scale, but, you know, it's just, I think it's pathetic. And yeah, what you do in that, you have a bit of humility. You widen the pool. And what it seems like is Keir Starmer's gone into a sort of bunker mentality. And it's, you know, I don't know what personal things have gone on between him and Angela Rayner or him and anybody else in the shadow cabinet. But clearly, he's decided, oh, this is a chance for me to get rid of other people and pass the blame onto them. And if I was, you know, he hasn't even been, I just looked at his social media feed. He hasn't even been on Twitter and thanked Andy Burnham or congratulated him or congratulated Mark Drakeford. So he's in this bunker thinking, who can I get rid of? Who can I pass the buck to? Rather than actually praising where the Labour Party's done well. And that is a failure of leadership.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'll come back to you in a bit, if that's okay. Well, we've got a while to go. We've got an hour. Right. And I'm going to now move on to Hartlepool, where I have this morning, like some kind of professional, I've actually interviewed someone in Hartlepool who was an activist, a Corbyn supporter, who is in Hartlepool and was not particularly encouraged by the campaign. My first question to her, this is to Andy Turner-Yare, Andy Turner-Yare, is she a Labour member? Because obviously that's what we all have to be asked first. Was she Is she a Labour member? This is what I asked her. Were you a Labour member?
Yes, until last... it was after the whole thing when Starmer paid out that journalist that compensation, and, you know, when we had the legal advice that we would win that case. And so I was behind Starmer. I mean, I wasn't happy, but I was behind him until then. I thought, oh, that's just the last... I mean, that was even after Jeremy Corbyn was booted and Rebecca. And I thought, I'll still hang in. And then I just couldn't after that. So that's when I actually gave up my membership.
And what happened when you heard there was a by-election in Hartlepool? Did you think of campaigning for Labour?
Well, there was one candidate. I mean, even within the CLP, you kind of got a feeling for who were the socialists in the CLP and who weren't. So there were several people that I would have campaigned for, even not as a Labour member. And I did offer to campaign for this one candidate in particular. She did actually end up winning for her ward, but I wasn't allowed because I wasn't a member. I was told I couldn't campaign for her.
Oh, they wouldn't let people campaign who weren't members? Wow.
Wouldn't let me.
So you said there were the council elections as well. So what happened because we had the defeat Labour in the by-election. What happened in the council election?
Pretty much a similar theme. We got a lot of paper Tories who, you know, they were just a candidate in paper alone, and they actually won some places. In my ward, we had two candidates who were actually Labour Party members, and I don't know when they left. It was probably a little time after I did, and they ended up standing as independents, and so they're ex-Labour, and they actually did win in my ward.
So the sort of Corbyn supporting socialist Labour people who had moved out actually won an election in Hartlepool. They
won in my ward as independents. What had actually happened is they'd formed a Hartlepool, I think it's called Hartlepool People Party. I can't think. But they didn't register that name in time, so they had to stand as independents, but they are actually like a Hartlepool People Party. Right. I can't remember the exact name. But yes, they are the socialists in the party who were in the Labour Party who left.
And what was what you've heard from people in Hartlepool? What do they think about Starmer, and especially the sort of beer drinking and flag waving stuff that he got up to? Did that work at all?
No. Didn't convince anybody. No.
And the candidate as well. Do you think that was a bad idea to impose that guy? I mean, only
Paul Williams.
Yeah.
They relied heavily on Paul being an NHS doctor, and that just didn't wash. I think the general feeling was that is that the best they can do, that, you know, bring in an NHS doctor and they'll think that we'll all just fall at their feet and vote Labour again, and it just didn't work.
Do you think Labour can win Hartlepool back if they have a new kind of leader or new strategy?
What I think is that Hartlepool people tend to confuse a Labour-led council with, they seem to think that they're actually the government, and we have had some pretty bad Labour councillors in Hartlepool for years. I mean, for years myself, I had to hold my nose to vote for particularly Labour councillors. And I think people just weren't prepared to do that anymore. The people that they thought, oh, the traditional Labour voters, they'll vote for Labour no matter what, because they always have, the mum and dad have, the granddad has. And I think that they took that for granted. And even traditional Labour voters like me, party members and activists, just thought, nah, just not doing it anymore. But I mean, even yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before, I actually did consider rejoining because I thought they'll get rid of Starmer now. So if I get my application in early, we can start, you know, stamping our feet and getting the party back. And then I've just mulled it over. I mean, the whole election thing leading up to it was an absolute nightmare. I was in bits. I didn't know what I was going to do for the best. And then this morning I've woke up and I thought, no, I'm not. I did actually send an application in, but I thought, no, I'm gonna withdraw it. It's not time, because he's gonna go further right. And how I feel about it is that's being complicit in anything that the Labour Party does. And that's why I left in the first place, was because I felt it wasn't because I didn't want to be a socialist anymore, because I always will be, but I felt I was complicit in Starmer just being Boris Johnson's wingman. Couldn't do it.
Right. So, and you don't think Angela Rayner's to blame for the defeat of this?
No, I mean, I'm not a fan of Angela Rayner, but I don't think she's to blame. No, I think the whole thing's just been an absolute mess, and it would have been embarrassing to get behind them. Would have been embarrassing. It's just as well they didn't allow me to, really, because I was mortified. The whole flag thing was just, it's scary, actually. Can't get behind that.
Well, that was an interesting conversation with Andy there, and I've also got on the call here, we've got John Booth, who stood against Peter Mandelson in, I think it was 2000 and something, and has contacts in Hartlepool. John, are you there?
Yes, I am, and thanks very much, Crispin. Yes, I stood in 2001 as the genuine Labour candidate. I'd won some money off Rupert Murdoch for a libel, and I knew Hartlepool well because my journalism apprenticeship was in County Durham. My oldest schoolmate married a Hartlepool woman. I'd been visited them for years, and for various reasons, I didn't think Peter Mandelson was a good thing. He and Neil Kinnock had headhunted me to be the party chief press officer a few years before, and then sacked me and smeared me, and that's what appeared in the libel. That's why I won the money. And what was obvious to me, even when I worked in County Durham, which was many years before 2001, was there was a corruption process still going on from way back of parachuting chosen favourite candidates into safe seats. And it went all the way back to Sam Watson and the miners. It went back to Andy Cunningham of the G&M. And I could see it coming to a nasty head if it continued to go on under New Labour. Because unless candidates had an organic connection with their community, when the times got tough, the voters wouldn't turn out and support them. And so 20 years ago, I could see that happening. I wanted to make a protest about it. I'd also received information from friends in America in 2001 that George Bush intended to invade Iraq. And I wanted to use that platform to warn people that that was on the way. This was long before 9/11. But of course, I got no publicity, and that wasn't possible to say those things.
No.
So it's a long process, and we've got to the culmination, which is obviously disastrous.
Now, we spoke yesterday on the phone, and you seem to suggest that Labour completely bungled this by-election on a number of fronts. Can you tell people why that is?
I'm not. I've got some friends in Hartlepool from way back, and one of them is on very good terms with Mike Hill, who was the Labour MP who was dumped, and his dumping caused the by-election. And there was absolutely no reason, from what I've been able to gather, for a by-election at all in the first place. There were allegations against him, as there have been allegations against other people. Look at all the allegations against Keith Vaz and how long the leadership protected Keith Vaz. And there was no attempt to protect Mike Hill at all. He was made to walk the plank. And then we had Chapman, who's the chief of staff apparently for Starmer, who hadn't the sense to save her own seat in Darlington 2019, somehow being regarded as an expert on North East politics, pushing in her pal who'd been rejected in Stockton. And Hartlepool people didn't think somebody who'd been rejected by Stockton in 2019, they'd been palmed off with a failure just because that's who the leadership wanted. And a very human reaction to that, to me, was to say, no, we're not having it. We're not having it. And there's just been a long history of people using Hartlepool and many other seats in the north of England as jumping off points for their career. Look at Sedgefield next door. Did we see Tony Blair going to fight Sedgefield 2019 when it went Tory? Did we see Mandelson going back to fight Hartlepool this year that had given him his career and launched them both on very, very wealthy business careers after politics? No, we didn't. They used these seats as jumping off points for their career. And it's happened historically in the Labour Party for many, many years. And some of the union leaderships are responsible for doing that. And that's where we finished up.
Can I just go back, because we've got to move on, but I just wanted to say, you think that Labour made a complete mess of this. Not only that, but they could have changed the date of the by-election as well. Yeah. Didn't they?
I mean, they chose it clashing with the Tees Valley mayoral election, when it was obvious with the publicity that Rishi Sunak was giving to his mate, the Tories there, was obviously going to get a lot of positive publicity. And that was going to impact damagingly on what was going on in Hartlepool. It was politically naive to an extraordinary degree. I mean, we're just seeing gross ineptitude at the top of the party. And the latest thing, which is to do with a woman who's been squeezed out, and even worse, reading this morning that Deborah Mattinson, of all people, Mandelson's little focus group creature, has been brought in to head strategy. I mean, hopeless. I've sat in one of her focus groups. It's all bogus. It's completely bogus. I sat through one in which people were pretending to be in a certain place and they weren't, and it was all used, and she's become very rich and she's now been brought in. Absolutely useless people. And it's very scary, because the people in this country deserve better from the leadership of the party than they're getting. All
right, well, look, thank you, John. Thank you, John, for coming on. You need to sort out your broadband a bit more. It's nearly there. It's nearly there, but it's better than last time. It's better than last time.
Yeah, all the best, mate.
Thank you. Now, I thought Andrew made a very good point about how Labour did have some successes in the elections. So I thought we could talk to people in Wales where Labour have done very well. Is that Dylan Lewis-Rowlands?
Yep, right here.
Now, Dylan, we spoke to you earlier when you were standing and highlighted you, and I hope that helped you in any way.
Well, I increased Labour's vote in the area to the best result since 1999.
Wow! So did that.
So with the introduction of the Senedd in 1999, that came with a massive vote, Labour vote, and here in Ceredigion, which is very, very much a plaid area, I managed to increase our vote to above that level, not to above 1999, sorry, to above every level before 1990, after 1999.
And how do you think? Why do you think Labour did well in the Senedd elections?
There's a very different political discourse in Wales, especially after the pandemic. So the first thing is that we were seen to be standing up for Wales, which was one of our slogans in 2016, actually. But here in kind of across the pandemic, we were seen to very much be standing up for Wales. And the problem is that completely takes out Plaid Cymru's sales, because that is basically their narrative, is that Plaid Cymru is the only party that will stand up for Wales. And what we've seen during the pandemic is Mark Drakeford time and time again take Boris Johnson to account, and make the hard decisions that needed to be made, and kept the Welsh people safe. That was very much the narrative on the doorstep. I was talking to Tory voters who were giving Mark Drakeford 8 out of 10 on the pandemic, which is yeah, there's a very different discourse here in Wales around a lot of different issues.
And I noticed that in your Facebook and stuff that you're a bit of a Welsh nationalist. Is that there wasn't a friction between you and maybe other Labour candidates who were not so keen on?
I don't like the term nationalist because my view for independence doesn't come from a place of nationalism or a place of socialism. It comes from a place of wanting to create a fairer Wales, wanting to create a Wales that works for the many. And sadly, what I've realised is that can't happen within the United Kingdom. That's where my place in kind of nationalism, if you want to call it that, comes from.
But you were able to be accommodated within.
Yes. So
that outlook.
Yes, what we saw in Scotland was one candidate popped out and said they're in favour of an independence referendum, not even necessarily in favour of independence, but in favour of an independence referendum, and they were destroyed by the Scottish Labour Party. But what we've seen here in Wales, and I'm very lucky, and one or two other candidates are as well, that we've come out as pro-independence, but we've been able to remain on our positions and still had support from the party and things like that, because that kind of, like I said, that kind of nationalism doesn't come from a place of nationalism, and B, the first step to independence in Wales is more devolution. And that was what the manifesto promised, was more devolution, stronger devolution. We don't have a justice system here in Wales yet, well, an independent justice system here in Wales that could work for the many. That is one of the key crucial steps for the nation building programme that we have to go on. So while we were very much pro-independence, that didn't conflict with the manifesto as well, which is a very interesting position to be in.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring in as well Maria Carroll, who's often come on. Maria, are you there?
I'm here.
So what do you think? What you've heard, what Dylan said. What do you think also affected the result in Wales and gave Labour such a good, what was it? A massive, quite a big majority. It was bigger than before, wasn't it?
Yes, and I know we always say this, but this was an election like no other, and I doubt that there will be another one like this. Well, let's hope with regard to COVID, there isn't another one like it. But personally, myself, and I know from a lot of other members, that we entered this election with a great deal of despondency. And that despondency was because we've had hit after hit after hit from Westminster and from, indeed, which is so very sad, our own party. We've seen members suspended, CLPs losing their democratic rights, all sorts of things like that in England. And now, having gone for this stunning winning, what was to us a general election, today we hear that the Labour Party has now gone into the mode of hire and rehire, that they sacked Angela Rayner, but actually they're going to rehire as something completely different. And also we had lockdown. So for me personally, because I'm in the shielding category, I'd spent a year locked up, and the thought of going out and doing all these things, all of that combined, as it did for everyone. But if you look at that lockdown, what actually happened here in Wales is that Mark Drakeford came into our homes. Every day we had a briefing in which he was there. And what he showed was leadership that was absolutely combined with compassion and caring. He wasn't bland, he wasn't anything. He was just a person that everybody said, you can come in my home because actually you've got it right. And that showed. So on the doorstep, when we actually got there eventually, there was a lot of talk of that leadership and leadership of everyone and compassion. And what people were saying about Keir Starmer was disappointment. There was very, very little mention of Jeremy Corbyn. When there was, it was only about, isn't this daft to keep carrying this war on? Why don't they just give him his job back after all the years you've given to your party? Come on, let's get it done. And there was very little talk about independence. But what Dylan is absolutely correct about is there was talk about devolution of power, because the UK, it's my dog trying to get in here, the UK is absolutely, in a lot of people's minds, broken. And part of that is due to policy. And what I think the mayoral elections have shown and the Welsh election has shown is that when you've got people who are absolutely engaged in the local community, that understand local communities, that understand that rural Wales is not like Hartlepool, and Hartlepool is not like Cardiff, and all those other things. So there's going to be a demand, a real demand for more and more devolution of power, which is in fact is what socialism has always said. Give people at the local level the right to take charge of their destiny because they know what needs to change and what needs to be done. So I can't see now. One thing we do know, I don't think anybody will try to challenge Mark Drakeford now. He's the star of this, along with Andy and the mayors of Salford and Preston and all those other ones. Well done, all you stars, and how very, very sad for those who lost their seats.
Oh, well, thank you, Maria, and good to see your son. Is it son in the back? Yeah,
William,
take an interest. We'll see you in the Senedd soon. Yeah. Okay.
There's just kind of sorry, Crispin. There's just kind of one crucial thing that I failed to mention earlier.
Go on.
And it's the very different nature of the Welsh body politic as well, in that, to some regards, to be Welsh is to be Labour. You look at the South Wales valleys, you look at Swansea, you look at Cardiff, you look at these areas, and to be Welsh, their identity is tied up with that kind of Labour message. I come from a valleys community myself, Cynon Valley, one of the heartlands of the miners' strike, and the very kind of Labour is drilled into you to some degree. And we're not afraid to wrap ourselves in the flag, and it's not in a patronising nationalistic way, but in a way of being proud of who we are, proud of our history, proud of our heritage, and ingraining ourselves in the communities and moving that forward. Like Maria said, Labour supporters are part of our communities. We work within the communities, and that really pushes us forward. And that's really disappointing. And one of the really disappointing things about that is we had a similar thing, community organising unit with it under the last Labour administration. And now that's gone as well. That is very much something that needs to stay, because that is very successful here in Wales, and that could very easily be replicated in England. It's a long time. It takes a long time to do. But when you do it, it's really effective.
All right. Well, thank you. Great to hear from you, and we'll hope you come on again to talk if you can. Now, I'd like to. Andrew Fisher did mention that there were other good results, and he mentioned Worthing, and Dawn Smith was on the show a few weeks ago, and we tried to get to publicise Dawn's campaign. How did it go, Dawn?
Oh my God. We won 5 seats out of the 9 from Worthing that are going to County Hall, so Labour is actually the majority party, the Worthing part of West Sussex. Obviously West Sussex is still hugely blue. We got 4 seats in Crawley. We sadly lost our group leader, Michael Jones, who was fantastic, but clearly the Tories were chasing his tail. That's a real loss to us with his experience, but he did keep his borough seat. I was the first ever Labour councillor declared for County Hall from Worthing, so I'm absolutely overwhelmed. I'm shocked. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to be very coherent talking to you because I've been crying and drinking wine and all sorts for the last day.
Not this morning, though. Not this morning.
Yeah, it's just been amazing. But I tell you what, it's not me that's won, and it's not the other 4 that's won. 5 of us won, and 4 of us are women. There's going to be a really loud sort of voice on that hall from us. But it's a team, isn't it? My name's on the ballot paper, but it's not Dawn that wins. It's the people that go out knocking on the doors. We are grassroots CLP, and that is how we won it, by being a collective, pounding the pavements, listening to anyone who would talk to us, whether they vote for us or not, focusing on the local issues. So I just want to say an amazing, massive thank you to everybody that helped, because obviously this was an election like no others. We usually go out in big packs, and we have people helping us from West Worthing or from Hove or from Ada, and we've all had our own sets of elections, and we can only go out in maximums of 6. And the wards are huge. Like my ward, my county wards are over 10,000 residents. You know, it's huge. So our swing in the vote is huge too. Mine was about 12%, but we've got some that are over 20%, and in our individual wards, you know. So yeah, Worthing is red, socialist red, can I add? This is not in the name of anyone other than the people that have got the real values attached to this party, and let me tell you, that is certainly what I am. For the many, I've lost my better note, for the many, not the few, is where I lay. And you know, we're going to speak up for people before profits, services before cuts. We're not going to be able to win the votes on the whole, because it's still about 50 Tories, but they're not going to get away without scrutiny and you know, us holding them to account. So, and we've got our borough and district results coming in today, and we've made some gains over in Ada, which is Shoreham and Lancing that way. We've got Worthing starting in an hour, and I'm really hopeful that we can get to no overall control at least. So if the votes that we got out of our county seats yesterday are reflected at our borough seats, we're going to go from about 10 to at least 14, 15, 16. The Lib Dems are going to be having to decide what way they want in the town hall. So yeah, things are shaking up here. And I couldn't be more proud of all the people that have made this happen. And some of the actual individual people that came and spoke to me, that trusted me with their vote, has moved me beyond all, you know. It's personal. Some of these things are really personal. I've got people that have come to me saying, I voted for you because you helped my little boy when you were volunteering at the children's centre that you're trying to save. And it's that kind of thing. It's just being about your community, and that's how we win. And that's where you see the wins wherever we've got. I'm really not up on the national, what's gone on nationally. It's obviously a mess. I don't really know what's going on there, but you cannot win anything in any rosette if you haven't got policies. And the clearest thing that I can see that's come out of like lots of things, there's no policies. We need leadership with policies. How can you, whether you liked Corbyn or not, you had policies. We really do need to know what we're voting for. And here we had 10 local pledges for borough level, and at county level we had clear pledges. And we have, you know, it's more about opposing what's going on at county, because they're massively in charge. So things like, for me, the children's centre, you've got to hook onto something. You've got to stick to bread and butter issues. People want to talk to you about their bins and their potholes, and you need to listen and act on that. Yeah. And that's what it's all about. So potholes galore is how Worthing, you know, we need to address it. So we're in now, and we've just got to get on with the job. So yeah, I'm really chuffed with with this little corner of red on the south coast, and Portsmouth I think got some too. I know one comrade in Portsmouth that got her seat. So there's something about the south coast. Something's going on.
Yeah. Oh, so maybe,
it's not just the Brighton drift either, because people keep saying it's the Brighton drift. It is not just that. Yes, our demographic has clearly changed, but it's also been donkey's years of a tight CLP that has got left and right in it, but coming together, unified on the issues that matter to the people that we represent. And that is where I think we're getting lost. We're very, very much arguing within ourselves, and the people that aren't as politically obsessed as we are, they just hear noise. They hear you sniping at you and he's not doing it. They don't want that. They want to know, what do you stand for? What am I getting out of it? And what are you going to do about it? And that's where I think we're just lacking direction nationally, where we're not here locally. So I'm just proud as. So thanks.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for coming.
No worries.
And well done.
Thank you.
I'm going to do one more, another good news story. Comes from Broxtowe Labour, which has a community hub, as we featured before. Jayne Marshall, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah. So can you tell us what happened because you've been campaigning on the ground, community-wise, for well before the election. So did it bear fruit in the actual local elections, or was it county or district? Or
we had county and we had 2 by-elections in the borough, and we won across the by-elections. We won those easily, and we got a seat on. We were the only ones to gain in the whole of Nottinghamshire, and the gained 1 seat in the county, which was marvellous because we lost 10 seats, I think, or 9 seats across the county. So yes, it really, really bared fruit in what we've been doing. And as you know, we've been on here before to tell you all about it. To tell you all about it, we were here 18 months ago telling you about our community hub and our food bank and our grassroots community organising and our practical acts of socialism. And yes, we increased our vote massively. Turnout was up to 50% in some of our seats because we worked on the non-voters. We worked on the 60% of people who don't vote. The Tories weren't switching. We knew that. No matter how big our flag was, they are not switching. We weren't going for the Tory vote. We were going for the disenfranchised, and it worked. We increased our vote share went up by 8.6%, I think, in some of our seats against the national trend. So yeah, it's really worth doing, as we've said here before. We know community organising works. I can't understand why it's been disbanded. None of us can. But yeah, we run an absolutely fantastic campaign. We had so many activists on the day and throughout, coming out for people, door knocking. Great ground campaign. I'm teaching everybody here who knows all this. But yeah, it shows you what a vibrant, well-funded CLP can do, and it produces electoral results at the end of it. So yeah, I mean,
yeah.
You all
Have
know.
you been? Has Keir Starmer called you up, by the way, to get you in as the campaign coordinator?
No, unfortunately, I haven't wrote a book about it, so I'm not part of the intelligent elite that he calls upon. We're just the ground force. We're just the people on the ground, aren't we? The grassroots activists that get things done. So yeah. But,
well, I think what you've done for the community in itself is commendable. But then to show that it actually pays off in electoral terms is evidence that does work. And it's a shame that they haven't listened to that yet. But you're quite persistent, aren't you? You do keep coming out and telling.
Yeah. I keep mentioning it everywhere because it should be the model that most CLPs can use or work on. All our Starmer leaflets are still in our campaign hub. All the Tory masks, the Tory sleeves campaign leaflets are still in our Tory hub. We didn't touch any of those at all. We went with local Labour Hood news, local leaflets, local candidates, and because that was not cutting through at all to people. People aren't interested in that kind of politics anymore at all. So we knew what our strategy was, and it was better. It supplemented our canvassing because we had something to talk about on the doorstep. We weren't going with promises and pledges. We actually showed what actions we'd already done, and it really, really worked. So sorry to be so indulgent about it, but yeah, it worked for us, and we were really pleased.
Well, thank you for coming on. I know you only came on, and I quickly put you on, but I want the good news ones in a row. So thank you for coming on, and I've got. I suppose you could say it's another good result and good news was in Liverpool. And Alan Gibbons, are you there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Did you get elected, by the way?
I did. I got elected 67.7%. In Walton, I was campaign coordinator. 18 seats, 18 Labour. New Socialists elected, in Momentum supporters. So we're really looking forward to it. And like the last two speakers have said, it was about that we'd right the way through COVID, worked in the community, worked in the food banks, the food hubs, delivering to people who were shielding. I mean, actually standing on, your community activism. I have to say, we're not going to say all wonderful wahoo stuff like the last couple of colleagues, because obviously we had an incredibly difficult set of conditions. The mayor had been arrested. The Labour Party nationally had done us no favours with a completely botched selection process for the new mayor, including stopping the process at the last minute and excluding 3 candidates. So, we took a hit. The mayoral election, a Labour mayor won, Joanne Anderson. But I mean, it's 14 points down from when Joe Anderson won in 2016. And you have to say, we've got to note that, and we've got to make sure we scrutinise everything. We put right what was wrong in the Caller report, and the new people elected have got to do that. The other thing you say is the tremendous resilience in Liverpool because we only lost 3 seats. Really sad to lose 3 Labour councillors to the Lib Dems. But I mean, when you think we've still got 69 Labour councillors, a big majority, in conditions as difficult as that, with all the bad news that we'd had, I think that shows, I mean, if they can't beat us now, when? And you look at Steve Rotherham's result, 58%. I mean, I think it's a good news story, but no complacency. We've got to recognise the disillusion, because Stephen Yip, the anti-corruption independent, got 20-odd% from a standing start. And that's saying to you, everything that was wrong in that Caller report about the council, let's get stuck in, roll our sleeves up, put it right, and build on grassroots activism. And we've got to say stuff, the party nationally led on the National Health Service, for example. I mean, local government can't particularly change that, but we can be against integrated care systems. We can argue that the nurses ought to get 15%. And we've got to have real strong policies, and just didn't see policies coming out nationally.
So in a way that you kind of made up for the lack of policies nationally, but through community activism. I mean, it was effectively that got you over the line, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's an element of it, and I think it's where councillors have done the casework and have tried to help people, week in, week out, had a presence in the community. All of that means that there's a resilience about Liverpool Labour. And there's a reason that it held off the Lib Dem challenge and the Green challenge. I mean, the Lib Dems were pushed into 3rd place behind a guy who 2 months earlier you'd probably never heard of except as a charity executive. And if they couldn't make substantial, impressive gains, that really shows, that Labour has got a very strong kind of brand, but we have got to make sure everything that was wrong is put right, and the new councillors like myself will have to learn quickly and contribute to Labour having, giving real improvements. I mean, that's what people want to see. They want to see things that improve in their lives, standing by renters, making some sort of impact on housing, talking about the Green New Deal and retrofitting. I mean, really helping the basics of people's lives.
It's really good to hear from you, and congratulations on becoming a councillor. Has it changed you as a person?
God, I mean, I don't sign me papers till Monday, probably like Dawn, do you know what I mean? I think a lot of us say we don't know what's hit us yet, but we'll find out, we'll learn quickly, and we'll get out and talk to people. I mean, that is all we can do, is try and help people. And
actually, I haven't got a speaker on behalf of Manchester, but what do you think of the Andy Burnham campaign, and what does that tell us about Labour's Labour's leadership or lack of it nationally, and how he's been doing a different thing?
Steve talked about buses, and it's not the only success. There's the Preston model, they done well. Salford done well on on a socialist appeal to the public. Across the Northwest, Steve Rotherham I mentioned, you're seeing a narrative of kind of strong municipal socialism. The other narrative going on is around South and around Wales and stuff. You're also seeing successes, but I don't think you can put that down for Ian Murray speaking for the leadership to try and co-opt that and try and make that something of their narrative. No. I mean, in Preston and places like that, and in Salford, they were talking about really putting forward local policies for the people. We want to see that replicated nationally. Strong socialist policies or root us in communities, not vague kind of buzzwords about flags and beer, and I'm teetotal anyway.
Right. Well, thank you very much again for coming on. We've got to move on, I'm afraid, to some not so happy stories of the election. I've got Andy Symons in Plymouth. Andy?
Oh, well, I'm actually in Torbay, Crispin.
In Torbay, but you were commenting on the Plymouth results, and what's happened down there?
The Plymouth result was an absolute disaster. Solid, safe Labour seats have gone Tory, and not just by a few votes. I mean, in one case, a Labour seat has been lost by over 1,000. It's been an absolute, I can't use the word I'd like to use, but it's been an absolute disaster for Plymouth's Labour Council, which is now a hung council with a very strong Tory group. I'm not sure on the final figures, but I think Labour lost at least half a dozen seats out of the dozen that they were fighting. And the problem with that, and it's one of the things, a lot of what I wanted to say has already been covered by people this morning. But one of the things that I don't think anyone has really sort of looked at in any great detail is the loss of a voice that losing councillors affects you with. I'm now in Torbay, I used to live in Plymouth, which is why I keep an eye on it. We don't have any Labour representatives on Torbay Council. We had a by-election last week, same time as the other local elections. I was the candidate. The CLP really went all out on it. And we had a similar, very, very poor result. And one of the reasons for that is the Lib Dems and the Tories on Torbay Council, obviously they have sort of free rein to say what they like because they are elected representatives. And because we don't have that, it's very easy for the local blogs, the local media to just ignore us. So that's what's going to happen, I think, across the country where we've lost councillors. The local media aren't going to want to hear from Ron Labour, the ex-councillor for whatever ward. They're going to be wanting to hear from sort of Justin Tory boy, who's just won it. And that has a real effect on local activism. Labour councillors, as has been said by so many of the comrades speaking this morning, they're the voice in the community. They are the people that should be demonstrating Labour values. And we're losing that, and we've lost hundreds this week, and that cannot be anything other than a disaster for the whole party. And I think we've really got to go back to a few basics. The loss of the community organiser units, making those people redundant just before the biggest set of elections outside of general elections in decades is ridiculously naive, and there is no justification for it. We also need to basically trust local activists. We know what's going on in our communities. And for the National Party to leave us high and dry as they have done, with no vision, no policy announcements, nothing like that, they should be communicating and engaging with people at grassroots level, and they're not. And I think the final thing to say, and again, it's something that's not been touched on, but it is something that certainly has affected us here in Torbay, is I think the regional office structure needs to be completely overhauled. The problem we had with our council by-election, we had to fight like hell just to get our leaflets approved by regional office. In the end, we had to arrange for party members to just bombard our regional organiser saying, pull your finger out, we need these leaflets printed, approve them and let us get on with it. The other thing, I was at the by-election count on Thursday night, which was taking place at the same time as the PCC verification. Regional office was supposed to organise having observers at that PCC verification. They didn't, nothing. The only 3 Labour reps there were me, my agent, and one count observer for the by-election. It was appalling. We were surrounded by Tories and Lib Dems, and it's embarrassing that our regional office has been that inefficient. And the other thing I'd say about the PCC campaign, Torbay is the 3rd largest conurbation in Devon after Plymouth and Exeter. And we didn't see our PCC candidate once. There were no campaign visits. They could have tied it in with a by-election, the council by-election, but we didn't have a thing. And God knows we tried to organise it from Torbay CLP. I just think Southwest Region, and I don't know if comrades up and down the country have similar experiences with their regional office, but Southwest Region is not fit for purpose. And until we get the organisational structures sorted out, it's going to make it increasingly difficult for us to win seats, retain seats, and put forward a positive policy programme, because we're just not getting that support that we need.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming on, Andy. Great to see you again. And yeah, so I'm just going to move on to Darran in Bristol. Are you there, Darran?
Yep. Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. So you just heard Andy there saying that Southwest Region was not up to the job. Do you think regional offices are responsible in some way for these results that we're hearing about?
I would say that it's my experience that people in most of the Labour members in Bristol are very unhappy with Southwest Regional Office, regardless of what part of the Labour Party political spectrum they come from. I know people who are like on the left, in the centre and on the right who all have a problem with Labour Regional Office. But actually, the results in and around Bristol have been positive so far. We haven't had the election results for the council yet, but we've seen the results of the PCC election, the West of England Combined Authority election, and the mayoral election in Bristol. And so far, the results in Bristol have been quite positive. The Labour have won the West of England Combined Authority mayor under Dan Norris. That's a win again from the Conservatives. And the mayor of Bristol, Marvin Rees, has retained the mayoralty against quite a strong challenge from the Green Party.
So do you? Well, I mean, that sounds a bit of a surprise to me, considering what was going on in Bristol with the members. Can you give an insight into why Labour did well, considering lots of activists weren't around? Is there an explanation for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some factors that count in how these results have panned out. The first result we got was the result of the Police and Crime Commissioner election, and the Conservatives have won that election. And I think last time it was an independent rather than someone who was aligned to a party, and the independent did well. The Labour Party came quite close to winning last time, but they didn't really push that election. They didn't really support the candidate. There wasn't really a lot of knowledge about it. And this time, the Labour Party candidate was Kerry Barker, who is, I would say, you know, the Green Party candidate was Cleo Lake, who is quite a high-profile Green Party politician. She was a Green Party councillor in Bristol and was also the Lord Mayor of Bristol. She's achieved some renown because she got a golden motion passed through the council calling for reparations, which made international news. She also was one of the only politicians in Bristol who criticised the police over the brutal kind of attacks that they inflicted upon protesters in Bristol over the Kill the Bill protests. And she also has called for things like the decriminalisation of cannabis and a change of approach to drug offences. These are all things that are very popular in Bristol, and particularly popular among the left in Bristol, whereas the Labour Party candidate, Kerry Barker, said in a meeting that he opposed decriminalising cannabis because of some papers he read in Cambridge University in the 1980s, which is a ludicrously outdated kind of thing to say, and it's not something that was going to win a lot of support. So Cleo Lake did very well as the PCC candidate, and I think it's because a lot of left-wingers chose to vote for her rather than voting for the Labour candidate.
What was the turnout like for the mayoral ones?
For the mayoral election, the local election turnout is slightly lower than it was in 2016. So there's been a decrease in turnout. I think there's been an increase in turnout for the West of England Combined Authority mayor. But one part of the reason that Labour have managed to do quite well in this WECA election is just about the timing of elections. Because what happened was South Gloucestershire and Bath and North East Somerset. Like West of England Combined Authority is Bath and North East Somerset, South Gloucestershire and Bristol Combined Authorities. It used to be known as the Avon region. And South Gloucestershire and Bath and North East Somerset had their local elections in 2019. Bristol were due to have their local elections in 2020, and they were delayed by a year by the COVID pandemic, which meant that by the time these elections happened, there was a backlog of elections that were due to take place. The West of England Combined Authority, the Police and Crime Commissioner, and the Bristol local elections were all happening at the same time. This was going to give an advantage to the Labour Party because Bristol had 3 elections to turn out for, whereas South Gloucestershire and Bath and North East Somerset only had local elections to turn out for, which meant there would have been a higher number of voters from Bristol than there would have been in the other combined authorities. And Bristol is more left-leaning and it is more likely to vote Labour than South Gloucestershire or Bath and North East Somerset. So that has managed to boost and give a kind of increase the turnout and increase the share of the Labour vote in these elections, I would say. So that's it explains part of the reason why Labour have done quite well in Bristol. Other reasons are that the incumbent West of England mayor, Tim Bowles, the Conservative, was an absolute non-entity. Nobody knew who he was. He had no profile whatsoever, and he has achieved nothing. So for that reason, he was a useless candidate and we've been quite easy to defeat. Whereas in the Tees Valley Combined Authority election, Ben Houchin, the Conservative incumbent who won with an increased share of the vote, had a strong local profile and had a lot of local support, including from people who might have been Labour voters. Whereas because of Tim Bowles was such a useless candidate, it just meant that he was quite an easy to beat candidate, I think. I think that's part of the explanation. The other thing is that the other parties, they kept changing who they were standing and where. So Tim Bowles, the incumbent Conservative, was going to stand again, but then the Conservative Party just took him out and said, actually, you're not going to stand again. And they just replaced him with a different candidate. We don't know why that is exactly. They might have just thought because he's got such a low profile, he's done quite a bad job. So they replaced him with the person who was originally standing as the Conservative candidate for the Bristol mayor elections. These things are all quite complicated, which is why a lot of people don't really understand what all these different layers of local government are. But basically, the Conservative chose a Marvin Rees doppelganger as their Bristol mayoral candidate, a kind of quite good-looking, professional, bald black guy from a kind of similar professional background who expressed quite similar views. And he was originally standing in Bristol, but then they moved him over to stand in the Wecker mayoralty for some reason, even though he had no profile outside.
Right. So they were. I mean, being the incumbent is always an advantage, isn't it? And I would have thought that it's difficult if you look at the other results across the country that the mayor has been retained. They've retained their position almost in every mayoralty.
Yeah, absolutely, but I think you can see a difference between, for example, in Manchester, where Andy Burnham has romped home with a huge increased share of the vote and a massive kind of endorsement of what he's been up to, because he's been providing very strong opposition to the government and he's been providing kind of leadership on the left. And he's also come up with strong policies. So, for example, Andy Burnham is bringing the local bus service in Greater Manchester into local authority control, which is the kind of thing that you would want to see from Labour local government. And Keir Starmer, when he was campaigning for these local elections, went up to visit Manchester and spoke about how proud he was of Andy Burnham and how it shows through bringing the buses into local control what Labour can do when they're in government. But on exactly the same issue, Dan Norris, the West of England Combined Authority Mayor, and Marvin Rees have been asked, will you bring the local buses into local control? And they don't want to do it. So the reason Andy Burnham did that, it wasn't just because he chose to do it, it's because We Own It, the think tank who are in favour of public ownership, and Acorn, the community union, built a campaign and pressured Andy Burnham into adopting that position. Acorn have been trying to do the same in Bristol and the surrounding area. So they've been running a campaign to get the buses brought into local public control. And the Liberal Democrats and the Greens both committed and said they would do that if they were elected. Whereas Dan Norris and Marvin Rees have both said they will not do that. So the problem is that there is no consistency. What does Labour stand for in local government? There is no consistent message. The way that Labour campaigned nationally on these local elections was by talking about national issues which have nothing to do with local government. Like, for example, if you vote for us, we are going to increase the pay of nurses, which is absurd. It has nothing to do with local government. What the Labour Party could and should be doing is pointing towards examples where it's implementing municipal socialism in practice, as in, for example, Salford, or for example, Preston, or for example, Wales. So where Labour are in power and are doing things that we would describe as socialism in action, they've come home with a very improved result. So we can see the way that Labour could do better in local government elections. What it could do is develop a consistent policy platform, a consistent message for what good socialist local government looks like. But that's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is kind of contradiction and a lack of coherent messaging.
Right. Okay, look, I've got to move on because I've only got 10 minutes to cover Scotland, Sheffield, the West Midlands, and Broughton and Appleby. So that's quite a task. But I will start. Thank you, Darran. I'll start with Scotland because I did want to hear. It's a very interesting situation there. Matt, are you there, Matt? Have you gone to sleep? Matt, are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
Hi, Matt.
Sorry about that.
Sorry for the delay. I didn't want to put Scotland at the end, but can you tell us what the result means in Scotland for Labour? What's Labour's thing? Because obviously we're seeing all this stuff about the SNP and the possibility of an independence referendum. But how did Labour do up in Scotland?
Well, from a left perspective, certainly it's mixed. So on the upside, we've got some good left candidates elected. Amongst them, Mercedes Villalba, we've got Katie Clark, some of you'll know as a former Westminster parliamentarian. We've got Carroll Mochan, we've got Paul Sweeney. So we've got some notable kind of people who are regarded as on the left who've got into the Scottish Parliament. So that's a success in many ways. However, the delusion in Scottish Labour Party continues. We've got a new leader in Anna Sawar, who's out and about today saying we're finally back on the pitch, but he neglects to mention we're back on the pitch with too few players. He has spent the last 3 years undermining the previous leader, used his millionaire backers to remove the previous leader 10 weeks away from an election. And so it goes on, and all the time we haven't come to terms with the constitutional question at all. Anas is still taking this position that there can't be a referendum at all. I think we're going to get bounced into a second referendum. Personally, like Monica Lennon, who stood for the leadership previously, and when I stood for deputy leadership the year before, we were both espousing the idea that we should take a more rational approach to the Constitution and say, look, if the people want a referendum, let's have it. And then we can argue our corner when that comes and argue the case for Devo Marx or federalism or whatever it is we want to argue for, or even some of our members will vote for independence. I know that comrade from Wales earlier on, Dylan, I think he referenced Holly Cameron's travails. She was a candidate selected in Kelvin who was effectively done in because she dared to say that if there was if there was a mandate, a parliamentary mandate for a second referendum, she would be okay with that. I mean, it's an absurd situation. And as I see, I would far rather the Scottish Labour Party got back on the front foot for once, for the first time in 20 years, and actually took the bull by the horns and said, look, right, people want this debate, let's get in and amongst it, rather than seem to be running away from it and wrapping ourselves in the Union Jack. Because as we've discovered all over England in the last 48 hours, wrapping yourself in the Union Jack does you no good. I'm consistently, something I've been saying for some time, when people talk about the Red Wall constituencies being lost in England in particular, it is mirroring what happened in Scotland in the decade running before. And my only plea to people, to comrades elsewhere in the UK, don't do what the Scottish Labour Party did. Actually engage with place as well as class. You can't do that without abandoning it. Because if you don't, you're looking at oblivion in the face, as we are in Scotland, in third place for the second consecutive election.
Wow. And what do you think the chances are? I mean, it doesn't sound particularly positive, but what do you think the chances are of Labour getting any gains whatsoever in the Westminster election in Scotland, the next one?
As things stand, I mean, I've got a dog in that fight, so having stood in the last couple, but as things stand, I don't see anything. There's nothing on the horizon that's changing. I mean, in 2017, I came within 60 votes of winning this constituency in Glasgow South West, and the reason we came that close is because we had a genuine possibility of a radical Labour government winning power, and that changed things. By 2019, other things that got involved, like Brexit, and that solidified some support around the SNP, and the SNP were better organised, that has to be said as well. But you see now that there is, I'm looking right now, and I don't see, and I hate saying things like that. I always feel like I'm on here doing my, doing my doom and gloom bit here. I'm very sorry, but there isn't a possibility in the horizon of a Labour government at the UK level. It just isn't there. I don't see any possibility of us winning the next general election as things stand. And oddly enough, the lack of that possibility is what keeps us in a difficult position in Scotland, because people don't take us seriously until we, because the whole argument around the Constitution is, well, we want, as many people have taken on the left, we want independence because there's no possibility of a left Labour government at UK level. So we should march off on our own. And I think that's certainly an argument. It's not one I personally speak to, but if there's no possibility of it, what are people voting for?
So if England and Wales can't produce a strong Labour, the possibility that Labour could win, then the SNP will keep picking up votes. Is that kind of?
That's kind of what happens. But also, I mean, as we saw in you can remember the 2015 election posters. I always remember it was a poster with Alex Salmond with Ed Miliband in his top pocket. The Tories produced. And I understand that the strength of the SNP can, in certain areas, can be seen to be damaging for the Labour Party in the North of England. So we're in this kind of catch-22 in a way. I understand that the path to a Labour victory at UK level, we need to win some seats in Scotland back. We definitely do, but we can't win some seats in Scotland back until it looks likely that we can at least win at UK level. But there's also, as I said, back to the point about taking a rational position on the Constitution, McDonnell was brave enough to come forward and say, well, if the Scots want to vote on it, then let them have it. Actually, interestingly, Starmer said it as well before he was then reined in by the Scottish Labour Party, ironically, to stop saying it. But they're both right. I mean, that was one thing Starmer's got right, before he started getting it wrong again. We just need to say that we believe in democracy and walk the walk. That's all. Really, that enables us. That gives us a space to talk about the stuff we want to talk about.
Well, I've got to move on. Sorry, Matt.
That's all right.
We have to talk more about what's going on in Scotland because we don't have enough on that. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
I'm going to move to Sheffield to Chris Peace, Sheffield was not a good result for Labour. Chris, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Crispin. And, first of all, congratulations to all those socialist candidates who did win. We've got to build on that hope. And I'm really glad you included what's happening across other parts of the country where we made Labour gains and stood firm. Commiserations to all those, congratulations those who didn't win and congratulations to who did. In Sheffield, we're now no overall control. So we lost 8 Labour seats, gains made by the Greens and the Lib Dems. We're now in a position where Labour is 2 seats short of making the majority. And the Lib Dems and the Greens are 1 short. And we've had, for the first time since 2007, a Tory councillor elected. We've got 1 Tory on Sheffield City Council now, who seems to hold the balance of powers. And I really hope some of the rumours that have been floating around on social media that, you know, there's talk of approaching the Tory council. I hope they're completely unfounded. It would be disgraceful. We've got another result to come in, and this has been the problem. It's not a new problem, but the council, the Labour group, have been perceived by the public as not listening. And we've actually got a referendum result, which they're doing the count tomorrow, that we move from a strong leader and cabinet to a committee system, which I voted for. And I think that's the frustration. The other thing that I want to touch on and really make this clear is that there's a disconnect between Labour group and Labour members. There's a huge amount of activism in Sheffield. We've got a very strong group of Acorn campaigners. We've got a new group of Sheffield Against the Policing Bill. There's lots and lots of socialist activists, Labour Party members who want to work with Labour group. And so there's actually a letter going round which has got over 100 signatures from Labour Party members already, calling on the NEC to allow members, Labour Party members, to elect the council leader. We had a new council leader just in January. He lost his seat to the Greens. They pushed, and on Saturday, they've elected a new leader already. We're calling on a time of reflection over the next year to actually look at this properly. Let's have it as a pilot. Let's do it somewhere else. Some other councils might want to have a look at the letter that is getting sent on behalf of Sheffield members. You can't be dismissive of the members just because you don't like our socialist politics. We've heard that it's municipal socialism which is being accepted and voted for by the public. We've seen it in the Northwest. That kind of thing would go down in Sheffield so well. But let's not have this disconnect between Labour group and Labour Party members, because we all want the same. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. I don't know who's going to be making deals to go into coalition, but it's an opportunity for Sheffield. We've got to have the group listening. We've got some good socialist councillors on there who have always been fighting for the people of Sheffield. They need to be listened to. We're here as Labour activists to work. So let's get on with it now. And any Sheffield Labour Party members on here, if you've not signed the letter already, please do. It's on social media. You can add your name, add your constituency, and if you hold any role there. But, you know, this impasse has got to stop. We won't win the council back next year if we don't take a massively different approach.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. Good to see you. Thank you for waiting so long as well. And there are other people waiting. It's good to be in a queue. It's good to look behind you in a queue, because you always feel better than looking in front. Murad, are you there? Murad was standing for Labour in the London elections. Are you there, Murad?
I am. Can you see me, Crispin?
I can, yeah. Good to see you again. You look well.
I'm just kind of catching up with my mum and my sisters. They'd heard what my fate was last night and weren't sure what to make of it. But
what happened?
Well, I've lost my seats, so it comes from a lower turnout, and the Greens and the Lib Dems coming out in much more force than we imagined. So yeah, I mean the most interesting thing about it all is how the polls really got it wrong, I think, from the outset, Crispin, when they suggested Sadiq was way ahead and was going to win it on the first count. That certainly didn't happen. The issues on car use, you know, congestion charging and things like this were big issues on the doorstep when you did get people in inner London as much as out in outer London suburbs. The whole thrust. I think there has been a moving away from targeting things that are kind of working class base of supporters. I mean, they did feel particularly hit by things like the changes for private hire vehicle drivers, them having to pay congestion charging and not use bus lanes. Many of them who had voted for Sadiq last time didn't do that this time round. So there are things like this which have happened in a very kind of London context. I feel the congestion charge increases which were imposed by the government for the TfL deal should have been completely resisted. It's clear that I got the impression a lot of people, where I did get them in on the door, that was their big angst. They've been fined for driving around in central London to get to their jobs and what have you, and weekends as well, which hadn't really happened without Londoners taking part in those decisions. Overall, in the Assembly, Labour's lost one Assembly member, myself, down from 12 to 11. The Tories have gained 1; they're up to 9. And the Greens have got 3, and the Lib Dems 2. We've seen the back of UKIP for sure, but most of that UKIP went to Tories quite clearly, in places like Redbridge and Havering and what have you. So that's. Can
I just ask you, because what do you think about Keir Starmer's impact on the election, or does it have no impact? Is it just about Sadiq Khan?
Well, I was knocking doors in Camden, in Regent's Park Ward, Somerstown. I honestly didn't pick up anything at all on that front. In Regent's Park Estate, they were more concerned about the congestion charge thing.
So you think the local elections, I mean, these elections, like we've heard from other areas of the country, that the community organising and campaigning seems to have worked well. So if you keep the issues local and you do well on those issues, you can win elections that way. And the stuff about, say, for example, Angela Rayner being sacked is a bit ridiculous, because she's not really responsible for those local campaigns, is she?
No, not at all. And I mean, look, I only heard about that last night, like most people, when I walked into City Hall to hear the results for the Assembly, and it was a complete shock to the system, quite honestly. I'm not sure what that was really about. Given that she's been elected to that position as deputy leader, and I thought she was doing a good job up in the north. I don't think we saw too much of her down in London, but up north, I thought she was getting things done at least, and getting involved in all the local stuff, which you're right, it has to be emphasised a lot more than I think maybe currently done so at the moment. And that's where you've got to give the control to your local party members. I think they've got a better sense and knows about what's happening or not. I mean, for example, we came very near to winning West Central, which is basically the poshest bit of central of London, in central London. That's Westminster, Royal Borough, Kensington, Chelsea, and Hammersmith and Fulham. All those things that people think of in London is in that, and we only lost it by a few thousand votes. If we had a bit more time and resources put in there, I think Rita Begum could have won it on Thursday. And that was a seat that was being won by tens of thousands of votes up until recently. And I can tell you this: the Tory incumbent Assembly member was pissing his pants when he was realising how close it was at the count on Friday. And I think that's one we've got to go for next time. But that's where I think local campaigning can come in. It can bridge those kind of gaps without any trouble at all. Rita, interestingly enough, as the Assembly member candidate, got more votes than Sadiq across those 3 boroughs, to her credit. And I think that's very telling. That I think if you emphasise the local, I think your candidates will get more emphasis than the regional candidate or your national candidates, and that clearly is what happened, I think, in West Central. That's one I hope next time we can get hold of, because it's a bit like when Emma won Kensington in 2017. It was one the Tories shocked the Tories. That's why they had to. It took them a day to get their head around the idea that Kensington has been won by Labour. But it did mean that they started working away at it almost immediately to win it back in 2019. But
it's not been a particularly great result in London, but it's. I mean, I'm really sorry that you didn't get in, and we'll have to get you in somewhere. We'll sort it out.
Crispin, we'll have to kind of after the COVID, we'll have a drink in West London somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Good to see you. I'm just going to move on to. I'm going to bring in Andrea, and then I'm going to Brighton. Andrea, in the West Midlands. Andrea, are you there?
I am, yes.
Sorry, it's taken me so long to get to you. Now, you were on the show a few weeks ago and you weren't allowed to stand as a candidate because Region interfered in the selection, and you'd already been selected quite a long time ago and were working on the campaign, and this was taken away from you at very short notice. Did they make the right decision? Did West Midlands Region do a good job?
No. No, I'm sorry. I'm just going to apologise a little bit. There'll be quite a bit of background noise because I'm on the towpath because I'm off on my canal boat at the moment. So apologies for the background noise. One of the previous speakers was talking about the problems with regional offices. And in the West Midlands, we've had huge problems with regional office. So in Walsall, there was no campaign to all intents and purposes, other than huge pressure on individual activists to use dialogue. And it's not just me, but across our region, we've had lots of shenanigans in terms of leaving selections until the last minute to make sure that regional office could insert the candidates that they'd chosen, which meant there was no involvement of local branches in a number of these selections. So unsurprisingly, local branches didn't feel ownership and didn't want to go out and do any door knocking for people. So in all honesty, in Walsall in particular, in Sandwell as well, it's been an absolute shit show. Excuse my language. And I've been talking to people quite a lot over the last few weeks. And one of the metaphor that I've come up with is that we've got people talk about our party having split between left and right. And that's not what I see. What I'm seeing is our party splitting between the bulk of the membership and a sort of parasitic element within the party, which is the leadership, some paid members of staff, and a small number of councillors and MPs who have kind of hijacked the machine of the party and are using that to achieve their own ends without listening to what the actual rank and file members are saying. There seems to be an assumption that the membership of the Labour Party don't matter at all, as though, well, we'll vote Labour automatically anyway, and we are
an improvement compared to yesterday,
and we're not representative of other voters, so we don't matter. I think that's hugely problematic.
Right. Oh, it sounds like the West Midlands have done a disservice to everyone by not having you and other activists on board. What are your plans now?
As far as I'm concerned, the party doesn't deserve me. I won't be standing ever again. I can't put my family through this twice. I think that Walsall is going to be a very difficult place to be for quite some time, because we've got so much infighting in Walsall with this small group of people who include people who have not been elected to roles but carry on as though they have, and the interference of very senior local figures in grassroots politics. But I'm not sure what the role is for local activists, because in Walsall, as soon as you put your head above the parapet and start campaigning for any issue, this local group of people that I'm talking about try and chop your head off and exclude you from the party. There's only so much energy that people like myself have got. I've worked tirelessly for the last 5 years, and right now I'm going to take a step back.
It's quite depressing. Well, I hope you can come on the show more, and we'll try and encourage a different approach, because I think we've had people on this show today who've shown that activism does work, and if Starmer ignores that, then and the regional offices follow that course, then they're going to head for oblivion, aren't we? We're going to be nowhere.
Yeah, I'd just like to say on the subject of the issue with the leadership at the moment, the idea that taking responsibility for something means sacking everybody else and having a pointless reshuffle of your cabinet it's a special form of blindness that Keir Starmer just isn't recognising what the issues are. If he'd start listening to the membership rather than having focus groups, we used to have a focus group, it was called the conference. Yeah, he needs to get back to that. And if he can't get back to that, he needs to get on out and make space for somebody who can.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for coming on. And I hope is that a canal boat, you say?
It is, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
so I'm sat on the towpath under a tree next to my boat, which is over there.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you have a good day. And
thanks.
I'm going to move on to. I'm hoping this is Lucy Watson in Broughton and Appleby. Is that Lucy
Hi.
Watson?
Yeah. Hi. You all right?
I'm good. Yeah. So you were on a few weeks ago, and we picked up your campaign. And how did it go? Did you get an increase in vote?
Very, very, very slight. Yes, but it was always a two Tory health seat. I think I wanted to talk about the PCC election first, if that's okay, because we had Keith Hunter, Humberside PCC, who's had such an amazing record, and their first candidate, the Tories' first candidate, dropped out 2 weeks before because he'd been lying and it'd been proven. They stood a candidate 2 weeks, didn't campaign, and that he won. They're tribally voting here for Tories, and it's quite scary, to be fair. I didn't really get a chance to make inroads like I needed to. I got really positive feedback on the doorstep, but I need more activists. I need help. Most of our activists here have left because of Starmer. The Labour group is very right-wing and does not give any support whatsoever. So I need to speak to Chris, actually, about how we can sort of get more membership-led decisions on who runs the Labour group and things like that in the area, because it's stagnant. Regional haven't helped at all. I mean, I sound quite bitter, but my seat was never going to be a winner anyway, to be fair. It's just we lost 2 more seats in Scunthorpe now to the Tories as well. So the Tory group in Scunthorpe is so strong. Their communication is really strong. They've got all the papers on their side, all the media. So we've got a lot of hard work to do, but with the current Labour group on the NLC, it's not working. They've got no vision. And with local politics, it has to be about local issues. I was helping over lockdown. I was very, very, I was seen a lot, and and I've got lots of projects on the go even now, even though I'm not a councillor, that I'm going to continue with. And some of the residents are really angry that I didn't get a chance to actually sit on the council because of this tribal vote. So, I don't really know what the answer is here, if I'm honest. But we've got another chance 2 years' time, and I'm going to stand again. And I'm hoping I can get more activists here to help me get my message across. But yeah, that's what's happened here.
Well, good. Well, that's good that you stood and you did get an increase, and you didn't get enough help. But I think from this call, we've seen that people can do it if they do the community organising and mobilise support. So it's possible you can build. I mean, I'm waiting for my result. People are wondering. I still haven't got it yet. I doubt I'll win, but it's good to try and speak out on the issues that matter. Thank you, Lucy. Now I've overrun, which isn't normal on this show at all. Normally it's very tight on this show, but there's a couple of people who'd like to speak before we go to Activist Corner. I want to tie up this election issue before we move on. So now there you are, Norman, again. You've got your hand up. Would you like to add something to the discussion?
Yeah, I mean, just listening to a lot of the stories, especially Andrea in the West Midlands, it's such a familiar story to activists across the country. And yes, local issues are obviously, this is the bread and butter of fighting local elections, local issues. But how can you do that if you've got a bureaucracy that is setting out to sabotage and interfere with you at every turn, which is what has happened in South Thanet. They basically suspended CLP officers. They've taken the life out of our local party. We have had much better results if we hadn't done the crazy suspensions imposed on us that have happened since the end of last year. But it's just an awful situation to people working so hard against the grain, against the river. I mean, local activists are fighting against what? If they get into power in council, you've got a Tory government in charge, which limits incredibly what you can do, even if you get into a position of local government. You've got your own leadership that is basically trying to stop you pursuing the left-wing policies that you want to pursue. And you've got this bureaucracy, the regional people who are there to basically push the party to the right. I mean, you know, I'm just amazed that the Labour Party's got any activists who are prepared to go out and fight for them when they face all those sorts of odds. Until we actually address the problems that we face in the leadership and the MPs who are the vast majority right-wing, and the Tories as well, all grouped together, not to mention the media, then we're not going to make progress. And I think what we've got to do is take direct action. We've got to go against the leadership of the party in terms of demonstrating, picketing. Soon as COVID allows, we have to be out in the streets, and we have to say to Starmer and the right-wing MPs, this isn't the way to go on. We've got to fight against it. We're having a meeting next Saturday, Labour in Exile meeting at Saturday, to plan the fight back. So I think everybody here who has been complaining about Starmer, because I don't think there's any point in complaining about Starmer, because there'll be nobody else who will replace him. It'll be somebody more right-wing. And Andy Burnham, you know, we were fighting Andy Burnham to get Corbyn elected. And Andy Burnham on those election meetings that we saw him at, he was just being the typical left-wing character who makes left-wing noises, but you know very well, once they get into a position in power in Westminster, they will turn around and they will betray everything they've said, because he just fits the classic pattern. There's no point in fighting for Burnham to replace Starmer. It's not going to work. We've got to actually take the Labour Party on at the roots, and the grassroots are the people who can take the Labour Party on, but it has to be by direct action. There's no point, I think, in any other route of, or, you know, we can't rely on the passing motions at the conference in September. It's all going to be stitched up. We've got to get out on the streets and picket.
All right. Well, thank you, Norman. We'll catch up with you later, another show. Thank you. And Mia, you have your hand up. Are you there, Mia?
Yeah. I spoke a few weeks ago about how in the 2017 campaign, I campaigned whilst experiencing a nervous breakdown. And in 2019, again, my mental health wasn't much better. And it was a much tougher election, like with bad weather, and it was a much tougher gig with like people not being very pleased to see us. And I came away from that election like feeling proud to have taken part in it. And it is with regret that I felt unable to vote this time or campaign, because although I believed in a lot of the local candidates and a lot of them were good friends, I just felt that the leadership goes so far against what I believe in, and I feel that it's not good for the party or for the country. And I mean, I like to think I've done what I like the best. But I think what it is that I guess I fear that if the leadership remains, then this sort of result could play out in the next general election, which none of us want. So I think what I'm hoping is that I mean, I was determined. I didn't vote for Starmer, but I was determined to give him a chance, and I just feel that. But it's like, I think it's clear that sort of like when he started sacking Long Bailey and Corbyn, and like it's like he's waged a war on the left, and like members are being suspended. It's clear that that sort of like, yes, it's clear that sort of he isn't good for the party.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, look, I've got to move on because I think Libby's going to.
But all that said, can I just say congratulations to all the members, all the candidates who won despite that, and like sorry for those who lost.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mia. Now I'm going to. We have now. I mean, we might talk a bit later on, but I just wanted to finish that conversation, and now I'm saying hello to Libby. Libby, are you there?
Hello, Crispin.
I'm sorry that it ran over, but I couldn't really do. But I wanted to cover the whole country, and it was a bit much. But and I'm sorry we didn't get the comrade from Brighton to speak.
Yeah, she's a mum of 4 boys, and she had to go and look after them. So,
So maybe we can get her on another time to speak.
Yeah, that would be nice. I mean, really, I can tell you what happened in Brighton, and I've listened to all the comments today, and I think it's amazing the socialist candidates who've managed to break through and buck the national trend. And congratulations to all of you. And it's clearly down to your hard work and down to your community activism. But I'd like to say that both our candidates in our by-election in Brighton are massive community activists, and they worked their socks off, and there was nothing that was going to buck the Starmerisation that's happened down in Brighton. And I was outdoor knocking day after day for our fantastic candidate, and everyone who said they couldn't vote Labour, who had voted Labour before, said they couldn't vote Labour because of Starmer.
Wow. So it's not rain. It's definitely not Rayner then.
It's definitely not Rayner. No one mentioned Rayner's name down here. It was all Starmer. And we've got 2 local Labour MPs. We're lucky in Brighton. But, you know, amongst the horrendous sea of blue Tories in the southeast, we have a little bit of sanity with 2 red and 1 green MP down in Brighton and Hove. And I can say Lloyd Russell Moyle was fantastic support for our campaign, and Peter Kyle was absolutely nowhere to be seen. Him and one of his centrist supporters from the Brighton Labour group thought it was more important to go all the way up to Hartlepool.
Oh, they did well up there though, didn't they? So it wasn't a wasted journey. So who have you got on Activist Corner today?
So today, Crispin, I've got a person who's on strike who works for St Mungo's. And he's been waiting very patiently. I hope he's still there. Vicko, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Hi, Vicko.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
So far, so good. Thank you.
Good. I'm sorry that you're on a slightly later than I anticipated, but you're here now. And you can see in my backdrop behind me your picket line.
Excellent. Thank you.
Your fantastic picket line. And if Isaac is still here, or Jayne, can you please share the link in the chat, because there is a link for our audience, because you shared it with me earlier, Vicko, and it's thank you, Isaac. And this is for your strike fund. So, Vicko, can you tell us, please, why are you on strike?
Yeah. The reason why we are striking is we are raising our voice against constant bullying, harassment and victimization by senior management at St Mungo's. This has been going for quite some time, and three of us, two of the people were union reps, have raised grievances against two senior people. Management has denied that this is a collective issue, although is against the same two managers, and they have start looking into grievances individually. Result on the grievances that all the points have been not upheld, around 27 points that have been raised. Investigating officer has interviewed only two managers who were actually accused of the misconduct or unwanted behavior for that. There were also another 12 witnesses who could have contributed and provide a picture. There was a number of documents, but they have said that the number of documents was it was too many documents for investigating officer to see. And when questioned why you didn't interview the 12 other witnesses, they have just said we don't have an answer for it. Union has rightly stepped in, and they have confronted the management. Management said that they're not gonna deal with this issue. Union request wasn't, big. They just wanted, independent look into the issues. Instead, management has refused this, so the only option was to go for a strike. Our team, this is a property services maintenance team, has been balloted, and 68% of people participate in ballot with 100% vote for it. So we have started our industrial action on 22nd of April. We are now in the third week, getting stronger every day because our word is also heard. As an immediate action following the announcement of industrial action, management has suspended me and written some threatening letter to other reps who was also involved in the case. So I just would like to say thanks for support from the branch. We got pretty good support from the branch, and anybody else who is spreading the news around about our struggle. The issue of bullying and victimization, general bullying in St Mungo's, who is one of the leading homelessness charity, is widespread. Union-owned independent survey has, among the members, has got results that 68% of the union members have actually experienced some kind of a bullying by the senior managers. And the fact is that 48% of all our reps, union reps, are actually involved in some kind of a formal process. So we are coming into the situation that you actually cannot raise the issue through the formal way, through the formal procedures. The management has recently published the result of their own survey, and they were saying how very pleased they are. The survey wasn't anonymous because you need to identify where you work, which department, or whatever, everything except your name. So they are very pleased, saying that is around 10% of people under those circumstances that have said they experienced the bullying. Bearing in mind the size of the workforce, this is a considered number of people. This comes, 150 to 200 people saying this, that they experience bullying there. To finish all, just said that we have recently have change of management, a new CEO, and everybody was excited to have the new CEO, thinking that the things are gonna change. Unfortunately, the old practices have just continued on. This is a third strike of St Mungo's in the last 6 years. So obviously there is an issue to be resolved.
Thank you, Vicko. That's so much to take in. It's so appalling the way you're being treated. I'm just wondering, what is it like? What has it been like?
It is appalling, and we are having.
Sorry, what has it been like for you having to take industrial action during a pandemic? That must be very difficult for you personally, but also just on an organisational scale. How do you do that? Because I know that Unite's had to fight to make sure that you have a legal right to picket. And what's the situation there? Because I'm sure that some of our audience would like to come and join you on the picket line. Yeah. What's the situation?
It is a difficult decision, and this is what we didn't want. But having get no response or stubborn refusal from the management, that was the only option. You can carry on direct action during the pandemic. We do have all necessary precaution, risk assessments, carrying out whatever government has said about the social distancing. There are some things, for example, you cannot use whistles or anything that produces the aerosols or stuff like this, but you could still shout. We use the megaphones, and we do have, response from the public. So credit to Union Branch for organizing everything and organizing the documentations and safety measures for all participants and the public in that respect.
Yeah, it's interesting that they're not so interested in safety measures of the workers when you're actually inside working, isn't it? But,
yeah.
All of a sudden, when you're going to have a picket line, people start worrying that it might not be COVID safe. So I'm just going to ask Isaac, if you're still there, Isaac, can you please just pop that link again into the chat? Everyone's been giving really supportive messages, Vicko. I don't know if you can see the chat, but there's been lots of people sending messages of solidarity to you. If Isaac, you can share that link once more, because I'm going to ask you, Vicko, what can our audience, we've got over 300 solid socialists on this Zoom call, what can we do other than sending messages of solidarity? What more can we do to help with your fight?
Yeah, in the circumstances as we are, we would just, be grateful, to spread the news around on social media, everywhere about our protest. We are gaining a lot of support on social media and presence, and this is the best way, you know, to fight the management and their decision this way. So very grateful if you could retweet things. You could also approach and ask directly St Mungo's management what is going on, both on Facebook and Twitter, asking them to resolve the issue.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea of pressurising St Mungo's like that. Thank you so much for being my guest, Vicko, and I wish you every good luck with your strike, and I'm sure you're going to win. Solidarity.
Solidarity. Thank you all.
Thank you, Vicko, and solidarity with you. And sorry to keep you late with these silly elections. Thank you, Libby, as well.
Thank you, Crispin.
Now, I've got to make up with some other people who I've left late. Oh God, it's terrible. Now we've got Suzy in Plymouth. Are you there, Suzy? You still there?
Hello. Yes, sir, I am. Woohoo!
Oh wow!
Yay! You just caught me before I. Yeah, I'm at the Lido. It's all open. This is my first go this year, so I'm
You're going to go in.
excited.
It's a bit cold. Isn't it cold? You've got a jumper
Yeah, I'm
on.
going in. If you'll excuse me, I'm just going to show you my legs. One moment. I've got my special boots on. These will keep my feet warm. I've got special boots and special gloves.
You're wearing boots.
Because I'm not that brave at the moment.
You're not wearing boots.
Special
in
boots.
Lido.
They're special swimming boots, and I got special swimming gloves, and I got my cosy on. Woo!
Wow.
I'm with my bestie and her daughter, who I think I accidentally just filmed in the corner there, waiting for me. We all got to go in together because it's traditional. So.
Oh, is there a tradition of going in together on the first Lido of the
we go in.
year?
Well, it was actually open last week, but I couldn't go in. So this is our first one, but it is our tradition. We all get in together. But it's very nice. It is cold, but it's lush. I'm sorry I can't stay. But they're waiting for me. We've got a dump drive. I mean, I could get them to film me going in, but I don't. No one wants. But it's nice to be back.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
That's all right. I might want my legs.
No, I'm at the Lido, but thanks for the legs as well.
See you properly Wednesday. Nice to see you, Patrick, Don, Carol.
Hey, Suzy.
See you later, Suzy. Take care. Enjoy.
Bye.
And Don and Patrick here. Patrick, have you been doing anything?
Yeah, I just want to say that Suzy's actually in Hartlepool. She's such a liar. She's in the new marina in Hartlepool. She was left there after the campaigning. Come back down south. Absolutely bonkers. It was so funny that do you know on polling day on Thursday? So I don't know if you had it yet. Have you had your vaccination yet, Crispin? I don't know if Don's had it.
I haven't had mine yet.
You haven't had it. I had it. I had it on Thursday on polling day. And let me tell you this, I don't know how many people have had it, but so I went for my first one. And normally, do you know what? It makes you feel like you're back at school. Normally, you know, like when you have to all queue up and you go in this big assembly hall and we had to sit in these seats. And I've never felt so scared in my life. And then you have to go to this booth and then the fella pulls out this massive needle and he goes like this, he goes, right, don't worry, it's not going to hurt. And I said, well, why are you using a needle? Why are you doing a big run-up if it's not going to hurt? Why can't you just give me the vaccine in an ice cream or just give me a lollipop or something like that? You know, you did that to the kids. And I'm petrified like this. And then he did, this is the worst thing, and I don't know why they do this. He goes, and he could see like I was like sweating. I'm just sitting there like this. I think, oh God, I hate things like this. And he goes, all right, so just relax your arm. And I was thinking, my arm was relaxed. Now that you've said that, now I'm tensing my arm up like this. I said to him, don't tell me to relax my arm because I can't relax it now. I'm just like, and he goes, stop being a prick. And I said, you're the one holding the needle. You give me the needle. You sit down, right? You sit down, you relax your arm and let me have a go. You relax your legs like this. So it was like, and then literally, I don't know if well, you guys haven't had it, but there'll be some people here that might have had it. I have literally had, luckily, no headaches or nothing, but I've had a dead arm. So this, I don't know if you can see it, but this arm here is dead. My left arm. That's the only downside of it. And it's great because the thing is, it's like nobody will come within 5 meters of you. You won't get corona because I'm walking around like Herman Munster. You know, like from the Munster, like I'm literally walking like this. I can use my right arm and my left arm is dangling like this. So I've like literally been at home. It's been all right. It's been good. But the reason it was on polling day, I was telling you, I was watching Hartlepool. Now, I don't know if you saw it, did you, Crispin? Don, you would have seen
saw some stuff, yeah.
So I'm originally from Redcar. And Hartlepool, and Middlesbrough, obviously, but Hartlepool's just up the road. And that was the biggest shock ever. Like, I know loads of people in Hartlepool. They're lovely people. But then I was watching the results, and it said 61 of the ballots were spoiled. Did you see that? Where literally people had ticked every box. And I thought, how have you got 61 people who've got it? They just go, well, that'll do, that'll do, that'll do. And then actually they got it wrong. There was 15,000 spoiled ballots because 15,000 people had ticked the Conservative box when actually they thought they were ticking Annex, Poland, Austria and Europe. They didn't know what they were ticking. What is going on? And I thought, Hartlepool, do you know what I mean? It was, so it has been a bit of a
seaside? Is that a town you go to for a trip?
I would play in Hartlepool all the time. And this is the thing. And when I do Middlesbrough as well, so I do Middlesbrough, and people will travel from Hartlepool to Middlesbrough, and they're lovely. They're the nicest people you can meet. But this is why the media is so, the way that it works. Look, June the 23rd is my birthday. And I only say that because...
June the 23rd, let me just write that down.
No, don't write that down. Because, do you know why? Because June the 23rd, spoiled Crispin, on my 40th birthday, bloody, I was playing up north. I was doing a show in the north, and it was all, and it was the day that June the 23rd was when we had do you remember, for Brexit, the elections? And I thought, oh, this would be great. You know, there's no way they're going to vote for Brexit. So when I played up north, literally went there on the evening, lovely people all talking about going, oh yeah, this is going to be ridiculous. We're going to be a landslide. No one's going to vote for Brexit. And then the first towns that all declared were all in the northeast, like Sunderland, Newcastle, Middlesbrough, Hartlepool. Hartlepool, it was something ridiculous, like 34,000 people voted for Brexit and only 14,000 voted for Remain. And I just thought, absolutely bonkers. And I thought, 34,000 people that voted. These are the ones that use EasyJet from Hartlepool that go to Europe most of the time. And I was thinking, you're the ones that are going to be suffering the most like this. And this just shows what was going on, where it was just, you know, they're the loveliest people. I think someone's put there, the organ grinder was to blame for Hartlepool. Exactly. Yeah. Because it's absolutely bonkers. But we should do it. When we can do live shows, let's do Stand Up for Labour in Hartlepool. Have you done that yet?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
actually, that might be a good idea. Yeah, I quite like that. But we are planning a tour. I'm trying to work on the dates now, and I'm pretty keen on doing one at Appleby Fair. In solidarity with Gypsy, Roma, and Traveller. So if you're up near Appleby Fair, I think it's in August. I think they've changed the date to August, but it might be moving again.
Well, August might work. Yeah. Because I think
Have you booked? Are you booked up a lot? You must be.
Yeah, bits and pieces. Now I think Edinburgh's going to be online mostly, but I think the festival like in August. So basically that might not be happening in real life. So yeah, we could go and do loads of stuff.
So you could do a gig online during Edinburgh.
Yeah. So
Don, are you up for going around doing gigs?
I'm not sure, Crispin, because I have to admit, during the whole pandemic, I've done absolutely nothing. And my careers advisor said I could become the next leader of the Labour Party. I'm in the northeast in a couple of weeks anyway for a gig. I'm in Stockton-on-Tees. So I was going to go to university there. One thing I'd like to say is I hate this narrative this narrative that the Labour Party is obsessed with woke culture, which I'm in favour of, by the way, such as gender neutral pronouns and so forth, and political correctness and the metropolitan liberal elite. If anything, the things that we've been discussing are racism towards the GRT community, increasing the living wage and affordable housing. So I think the reason why it happened, the election, is because the establishment still run everything, and people are buying into the establishment narrative that the Labour Party is full of middle-class university socialists and obsessed with identity themselves, which is not true. We're here to help make lives a little bit better for everyone else. So, but one thing I'd like to say, Chris, I received some bad news. I found out my best mate at university, even though I didn't go to university, I found out that he's a convicted serial killer. And his parents are absolutely devastated that he hasn't received his own Netflix documentary yet. Two more things. I saw The Son of Sam on Netflix. If you like true crime, watch The Son of Sam on Netflix. It's about a serial killer in New York in the 1970s. It's absolutely gripping. And secondly, finally, last week I went on the Kill the Bill protest, and I saw a lot of young people from the GRT community, Black, Asian community, and there were absolutely brilliant speakers in saying why we need to kill the bill. So yeah, that was really good in Trafalgar Square.
Now, Don, you're becoming a bit more of a commentator now than a comedian. That's what's happened with you coming on this show. You've lost your comedy to become.
Yeah, I can't help it. I've been on protests and stuff like that. I need to find punchlines now, but.
And so it's been a pretty bad week for Labour in the polls, and it's been bad for some bits of Labour, but we've still got a lot of people who are doing good stuff, and we've got a community here, and I hope people are not despondent about what's going on, because I think when we've come out of this lockdown, we will be able to go out there, and I'm sure. Are you there, John Dunn?
Yeah.
Still here, Crispin.
What are you planning to do when lockdown's finished and we can all go out? Are you gonna leave Starmer alone?
No, far from it. I'm telling you what I'm going to do, Crispin. I love the idea of direct action. You know, I've got some expertise in that, and I'm happy to give free seminars to any comrades who want to know how to really get stuck in. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to find out where our regional office is, and I'm going to show you how to deal with people like that. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. I mean, I couldn't campaign in local elections. My CLP that's run by absolute Starmeroids now even banned me from campaign meetings. So, you know, I was just able to sit back and, you know, and plan revenge. So, you know, I'm a big believer in not letting sleeping dogs lie too long.
Well, in a way, it's been the whole lockdown has stopped people thinking they can say anything. I mean, they could just come on Zoom and stuff, but it's not the same, is it? I mean, I can't imagine. I don't know how tall you are. Are you actually? Is it true you're 8 foot tall?
I've shrunk a lot as I've got older, but you know, when you saw Keir Starmer with his boxing gloves on, you know, I'm a bit of a bare knuckle fighter.
Patrick, have you grown at all during lockdown?
Yeah, waist wise, yeah.
Same here.
It's been. Do you know what it is? It's been during lockdown. It's been nice where, you know, you do certain bits. But I've been trying to get out and about doing certain. I started running again, and that was great. I'd stopped all the lockdown, and then it's been nice. You know, I think I'm excited now to get out. I mean, there's not long now, is there? We've got what, 10 days, 9 days, 8 days.
17th, I think.
17th. So we can go out and do stuff.
Go inside cafes and stuff.
Yeah.
What are we allowed to do in 10 days?
You're allowed to socially be indoors on the 17th. So instead of sitting outside on your own, you're allowed to sit inside on your own with someone else about 6 meters away.
So there's something between now and you can all actually meet each other. There's a sort of in between, because we don't want to get too excited too quickly, do we?
Yeah, yeah.
We'll all just go crazy. We'll actually meet each other.
But the thing is, Crispin, sorry, a lot of people can't do that because a lot of people in this court feel politically homeless. So after Starmer.
Hey, and I don't know if you saw, you just talked about the thing. Was it last weekend? I don't know if you all saw it. So basically, I don't know if anybody has got any relatives or anything in old people's home, but last weekend there was a great thing. I was listening on the radio. So basically, someone was protesting about it, where you know that if you're in a care home, if you left, did you know this? That if you left the care home just to go outside to a private garden or whatever in the old people's home, if you came back in, you would have to isolate in your room for 14 days. Did you hear about this? That's bonkers. And they were going, and I thought, this is absolutely crazy. These were people like in the 80s and 90s. And I thought, where do they think they're going to go? You know what I mean? I mean, how far are they going to, you're in your 90s. You're not going to go and do a Tough Mudder. Or go and do, oh, Jesus Christ. Ethel, come back in here, right? You're in your room now for 14 days. I thought, you got to let these people go out. It's absolutely bonkers. And then they've said that they've literally stopped that law now, which is, I think it was this week or something. And I thought, absolutely crazy. I mean, we do take things for granted, don't we? You know what I mean? Where we can go out and about. But I thought, when I'm in my 80s and 90s, I mean, you go out to the private garden, you go out to the garden if you're in an old people's home, and you're not going to get corona off a squirrel. You know what I mean? Out there. And if you want people to stay in that area, just put loads of Werther's Originals and jigsaws around. You're not going to go further than the boundary, you know what I mean? So I think next week is just going to be a bit more, we're going to start getting down to a bit of normality. And I saw something about you can hug. You can start hugging family members again.
Hug people.
But yeah. So it said officially, I don't know if did you also said on the 17th of May, you're officially allowed to hug family members. And I thought that's going to put a lot of pressure because a lot of people don't speak to some of their family. I mean, who wants to go and hug somebody? Like, oh God, we start fighting.
You're a big hugger, aren't you? So you'll be busy, won't you?
Yeah. I nearly hugged Don in Camden in December.
Oh yeah, we're doing the gig together.
And then he went like that, elbowed me.
Yeah, just like Alan Shearer.
Don, what's happening? There's no come here. And then Don went UFC.
The great thing about lockdown is that once it ends, I can see loved ones and my family as well. So, but also, what Patrick was saying, there was a woman that she was like in her 80s and she was having a socially distanced coffee in a communal garden with someone, and someone called the police on her, which I thought I can understand being the rules, but I thought that was a bit harsh.
Yeah.
Someone calling in the police, so I regret doing that. I didn't do it, by the way.
Well, look, we've got Rob's with us now. You there, Rob?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I am. Yeah, hang on. I just plugged the microphone in.
No, I've run over really, really late, but I think we had to do that. It was a big topic, but I think it was worth going through as many parts of the country as we could.
Yeah.
I haven't got my result in yet, by the way.
A little bit of red in Oxfordshire.
I'll show you my. I'll screen share my my seat if you like, so you can see that I'm actually on the ballot paper.
When do you find out, Crispin?
It should be today. They're counting it now. I'll show you the. I'll show you the ballot.
Is yours the Tory area though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
All right.
This is me. Look on the screen there. Look, just to prove that I'm there.
Oh, brilliant!
Oh, Berrinsfield and Garsington. Oh.
Yeah. So it looks like it says 3,400 ballot papers are out there. So I reckon I'll be getting probably about 30 votes.
No, come on.
And,
Don't be too optimistic.
I don't know what the result is yet. They've counted how many people have voted, so that's all I need to know really. For other people.
8,000. That's
so. Rob, are you able to end it with a grand finale?
Of course. What would you like?
The Internationale.
Right. Okay.
I thought that would be a good finale because it rhymes with finale. I don't know the words to it. Are you good on that?
No, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the first verse. I haven't learnt anything else yet.
So everyone, thank you everyone for coming on the call. Thank you again for everyone's messages of support, and we just got to keep hanging in there, because I think there's a lot of good people out there who are doing good stuff, and we can, after lockdown, go out there and do what John's suggesting, which is frighten the hell out of them. And we're all 8 foot tall now after lockdown, so let's let them think that anyway. Rob, I'll leave it over to you for the finale of the Internationale.
Arise, ye starvelings, from your slumbers. Arise, ye criminals of want. For reason in revolt now thunders, and at last ends the age of cant. Away with servile superstitions, huddled masses, arise, arise. We'll change forth with the old conditions, spurn the dust to win the prize. So comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The International